the task I'm doing today is creating a new user command that I'm proposing for inclusion in dialog version 18.1 due this summer. For a long time, there has been a utility that's not so well known. It's written like this: dialog utils rep obj, and what it can do is basically the inverse of the execute primitive. It takes an array and it creates an APL expression that would evaluate to that array. So, for example, if you write, it's a good example of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that. So it creates this quite a insensitive expression, and it can also handle nested arrays in various forms. So let's say we do iota each of iota 4 or something. So some things it simplifies arithmetic progressions. So even if we did 100 times that, then it can do that, and it also handles repetitions. So if we say ABC, ABC, ABC like this, so then it figures out that there's some repetition there. But it's not just, it's not really for simplifying expressions or shortening down expressions. What it's really for, what I use it for at least, is when the visual representation of an APL array is not so clear. So a good example of that would be the way, let's say we have a scalar 42, a vector 42, and a matrix 42, and for that sake any rank array 42, they all look the same, even with boxing on. And I don't like having boxing on the maximum level, because it's really verbose for everything. Every character vector is huge, and even the scalar uses a lot of space. So this would show it with many x's. Although even here, even with this level, there are arrays that you can't distinguish. So let's say, for example, we have 5, 5, like this. So 3 scalars mixed. So the only thing it says here is that it's a mixed array, but we can't actually tell which element is what. And so this is where, so let's turn boxing off again here, or at least a lower level. This is where this function comes in. So we can see it gives a proper representation of them, and the same thing for, we can see here that it does these. So sometimes I might not be able to tell also whether something is a reference to an object or it's the name of the object. So we can see, for example, if we do hash dot quadc dot dialog is a namespace, so it prints like this. And if I execute the string, we also get that. And then of course they're not the same. One is a scalar thing, and here too this can somewhat disambiguate. It tells us this is a string, and it will tell us this is a ref. By failure, it can't represent that because you cannot universally get a reference to this object. The object may not exist, and it may have different content in the future than would have now. So it's not a true representation of what's going to be then. It could, of course, try to serialize the entire namespace, but that might clash with something else in the future. So you can't do that. So it doesn't do refs, but it does do most arrays you would use, and it generates fairly readable expressions for those things. Sometimes I also find it useful to write things in JSON form, especially when I need to communicate with the world around. And so we have quad JSON for that. So if we say one quad JSON and some array, iota each iota 4 we did before. So this can be a bit more clear than the APL expression for it for outsiders. What is the comma mean and those kind of things. And then there's a newfangled APL array notation. So I'm using 18.1 here, and it has moved between version 18 and 18.1. So here it is dialog array serialize, I think. So, oops, okay. So this is a vector of character vectors. The idea is that this would show on screen like that. So, and we can see that an array like this, it looks rather nice. If you compare that to what this revobj function does, it's not nearly as obvious what's going on here. And so my idea is that I want to add a user command, something like this, and then you'd have the array or a variable. Any expression could be evaluated there. You could look at that. And then you should be able to, so by default it should probably give this expression here, that kind of thing. And then I'm thinking you want a modifier here which chooses language, or maybe format is better. And then you can choose, so if you want JavaScript or APL, or maybe you should say JSON, something like that. An APL, that would be nice. And maybe if it's a big thing, you even want something like file and then a destination. Something like that. And then it creates that file instead of printing it to the session. And a neat little tool. So let's get started with that. I could use the unew user command, which is kind of like a wizard and helps guiding things, but it's also fun to write things. Hello RGS. RGS is asking, is it windy inside? Like inside the room where I'm sitting? It's not. Windows are closed. Not sure if that's what you mean. It's a ruffling sound in the microphone. Oh, let's see. My hair, maybe? Let's see if I can untangle myself. Let me know if that's better. Okay, so I think I'll just write it from scratch. So the way I'm going to write this is I'll create a new namespace, and then I'm going to save that namespace to a file, and then we're going to populate that. So creating a new namespace, and I don't know, we can call it with a name that matches what's inside. It's fine. So before I do anything further, I'm going to do file and save as, and we're going to put that in my documents, my user commands. So this D is just a shortcut, but basically this goes to my own user commands, and anything from here gets loaded at startup time. So we're going to call it expr.dialog. It's a good idea to match the names. And for user commands, they have to be a .dialog. We save that. Okay, so now we can see up here that it's tied to this file. Any change I make from now on here is going to be written to the file. Okay, so there are three parts to a user command. We need to have a niletic function, so it has to be a Tradfin. There's no choice there. That's called list, and it has to return a namespace which describes the user command and its calling syntax and so on. Then we have to have a function called help, and that's the function that's going to be called when we do dash question mark and so on to get help for the user command. And finally, we have to have a function called run, which is the actual implementation of the user command. Okay, so first the list function is fairly simple. We just do list.name. The name of the user command is expr. The group is probably tools, something like that. I mean, we can look at what the current groups are. So probably tools is the right thing, or maybe array. Ah, yeah, array expression, because it only works on arrays. That makes sense. Let's put it in array. Okay, and then we need a description. And what I like to do is I like to define a global variable that contains a description. Then I can use it both here and inside the help. So generate expression for given array in APL. Actually, interesting. I don't know what's the best way to call it this, because I'm thinking actually not doing it really in JSON, thinking doing this as JavaScript instead. Whatever. And then we can just use that here. And then we need, that's important, parse. So parse is where we use the special syntax for user commands, where we have to specify how many arguments there are. And since it's an expression, then we just want to say there's one argument, and if there are apparent more arguments, they should just be joined to the first one. So it has to be exactly one argument, and it may be long. So every additional arguments are just added to the first argument. And then we have to have a modifier called format. And it's if you use format, then you must specify a value. So if I put it like this, that means you can optionally specify. You can use just dash format, or you can do dash format equals. But if you do like this, it has to be, and it has to be one of why Shang M is asking, do we define a data type here? I'm not sure what data type you mean. What do you mean by data type? Because APL normally doesn't do type checking here. No, this the 1L, this is nothing. It's not a long. No, L, it stands for long, but it doesn't mean, it's not a long integer or anything like that. This declaration here, all of this, these are instructions to the user command framework on how to package up. So user commands work like this: that you type the name of the command, and then you type some stuff after that. And the user command framework takes that whole thing and it packages up in a nice object that gets fed to my code. And so it needs to know what to do with this. Are these 4 different arguments? And how many arguments are allowed? So if a user command requires exactly 2 arguments, then it would protest. I don't need to do checking on that I've gotten 2 arguments. The user command framework will do that checking for me, and it will say that's an invalid number of arguments. So for example, if we say box user command can only take 1 argument, so we can turn box on, box off. But if I say box ABC, then this is not the code inside box that did this. The user command framework is saying that there are too many arguments, and similarly it could be too few arguments. And so what I mean by 1L, as we have here, is that instead of saying these are too many, it just says, okay, so it must be that these form a single argument, just with a space in between them. So I will see this single argument inside my code. That's what long stands for. So the format here, we will allow you to choose either APL or JavaScript. And that's it. So APL will mean the APL array notation thing, and JS will mean well, it's JavaScript, not JSON. We'll get back to that. And if you don't specify this at all, then we're going to default to APL. I'm not sure if this is the right choice or whether I should call it APL array notation and JavaScript object notation, and then have another option that's just APL. That would make it easier on the program control to choose, but I'm not really envisioning this should be used on the program control. It's more just a developer tool, and then it doesn't really matter. And this modifier is very long, so you can spell it out. But in reality, you can just say f equals the user command framework figures out what you mean, whether it's ambiguous or not. But by spelling it out here, we allow you to deform and format and for and so on. Okay, that's it. So this will declare to the user command framework that we are having a single command, so it's a single namespace, and it's called array.expr, and the description for it, and so on. And we should be able to see it here. expr.dialog, it's right there. So in fact, already at this point, I haven't even closed my editor yet. We should be able to do. We should be able to see it here. Oh, okay, we haven't updated it yet, but we can do reset. Right, and now we can see it up here. If we ask for help for it, expr, then you can see we couldn't get help, and that's because we didn't get a result from this function at all. If we run it, then we can see it's already saying too few arguments. That's fine, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't return a result. So sorry. Alright, so this is already working. The help we can write later, but basically what we want to do in here, it's quite simple really. We just want to choose what were we told about format. So if somebody does not specify format, then it's going to have a default value of 0. Otherwise, it will be one of these character vectors. So there are two argument. There's a two-element argument being given to run. The first one is the command name, and the second one is the arguments, which is an error. It's not really argument. It's more like the parameters. Yes, we can call it like that because it's both the arguments from here and the stuff packaged into a namespace. So we can split up omega like that, and then we just need to check params dot arguments. That's going to be the expression that we want to evaluate, and then we have the format in there. Oh yeah, right. We wanted to do one more thing. We wanted also to do file equals, and you have to give it a value. And here I don't specify anything after it, so that means anything is allowed. Any file, well, any string is allowed. Okay, but we'll do that afterwards when we're ready for it. So now we can say params.format, and if that is a 0, actually I like to write them on the left instead. If the format is a 0, then we want to just use this function on omega, and if params dot format matches APL, then we need to do the array notation, and if it's JSON JavaScript, then we want to do something else there. I think at this point, since we're doing a branch like this, and we actually want to collect the result and further process it to a file, for example, I think I'll convert this to a threadfin instead. RGS is asking, shouldn't the rep obj be applied only to CMD? Well, CMD is irrelevant here. I'm applying it. S. Kruger says, should rep obj on omega? No, you're right. It shouldn't be omega, and it should be CMD. It should be on the expression, and we'll get back to that exactly what it should be. But yeah, thank you for noticing. It's not omega, but not command. Command is always going to be expr. So because you could host multiple user commands in the same file, and you would then return multiple namespaces from a list, and in order for me to know what is the user command framework asking me to do, it gives me the CMD. But in this case, CMD will always be the same thing. But I'm converting this to a threadfin because I think that will just end up looking neater in this case. Oops. And then we just need a result of some sort. Then we don't need this really. Because since we're only really using it at that point, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and then we just need to do a select params.format and do a case 0 there. Case APL and case JS. And I don't even need to do an else, because this thing will enforce that I'll never be called with anything else than these 3 values. Nothing else is possible, unless of course we add more things. Okay. There's a little bit more to do with this, because this will always be a character vector. Actually, we should do the first one. And since we're using first, we should set quad ml to 1, and set quad io to 1 as while we add it. Can't hurt. This will actually return a character vector, so we're always going to represent a character vector, which basically just means add quotes and double all the internal quotes, which is not what we want. We actually need to evaluate it, but we'll come right back to how to do that. It's a little bit fun how we want to do that. So actually what we want to do up here is we want to do the value first. The value that we want to get out should be from here. Okay, and in the APL case, we want quadrac.dialog.array here, and don't forget to put the result. And since it returns a vector of text vectors, we want to mix that so we get a nice matrix displayed. And this one always returns a vector, so that doesn't really matter. Oh, here, this is interesting. We should probably not mix it at this point, because if you want to write it to a file, we want to have a vector of vectors, so that's good. Okay, so this one is this one is interesting, because if we go down to this, for example, this cannot be represented as JSON, because it's a matrix, and JavaScript doesn't have high rank arrays. But we actually have a new thing, fairly new, called high rank split. And it says whenever we see something that has high rank, then we split it so until it becomes vectors of vectors of vectors and so on, and then we can represent it. So if we want to generate JSON, then we are certainly not interested in presenting high rank. We just want something that people can understand. So this will work, and there's more we can do actually. So if we format each, no, hold on, that's not what we need to do. We can also say compact, make it a bit nicer looking, compact 0. So this spreads it out over 2, but this is a bit too verbose actually. We'll come back to that. And then there is the problem of a namespace as well. So here's actually a fun one. We have expr.list, right? It returns this namespace, so we can actually try quad.json on that. And especially if we do compact 0, then notice this is quite noisy. We use double quotes here for the names in the object, even though we didn't actually need to. Because again, I want to do JavaScript, not JSON. And for that, we can say dialect JSON5, and that gets rid of those quotes right there, and it also adds a nice trailing comma there. You can see there, which is good for maintainability of stuff. It also does a few other things. It will switch to single quotes if that helps. So we can see if we have a string that has quotes in it. So if we get rid of this thing here, oh, oops, I made a mistake. It has to be one there. So that's pretty ugly. And then if we switch to JSON5, then it switches to single quotes when that's helpful. So we want to do that as well. And then my only problem is that if we have the compact version, then it's really kind of ugly. Oops, it can't convert that. We forgot about high rank. I mean, yeah, sure. It's not compact, right? It's a bit too not compact. So a long time ago, I wrote it before we had these extra options on for quad.json. I wrote some post processor for quad.json. The code isn't even very nice. It's just some regular expression stuff I'm doing that does this conversion, and I'm going to steal this code that I've written a long time ago. So here we go. Let's see if we can clean this up a little bit. This JSON mat thing. Maybe we should make it a utility function in the namespace. That makes sense. And then maybe put it on multiple lines as well, so it's a little bit more readable. Oh dear, it's like one long thing. We can do this in steps. Okay. And I want to add dialect and JSON5. Okay. So it's not even that. It's actually just JavaScript at that point. And then we do this. We split that into JS here. So this one goes in and removes a bunch of white space, and it inlines so that you can see that if the leaf is a vector of numbers, the numbers get put on separate lines. If the leaf is a vector of characters, then it stays on a single line. So like if you do that, and I'd like to only inline by one step when it's numbers. So that's what the code does here with this. That's why it looks for this digits and stuff. Right. And then the last step here, it's adjusting indentation levels. So it takes a number of spaces, and we know that I know that this non-compact format always uses an even number of spaces. So we find indentation of 2 spaces, and we of a multiple of 2 spaces, and then we make that into single spaces, and so half the width, whatever the width is, we do half the width. Right. We can't just replace all double spaces with spaces, because maybe there are strings with spaces and so on. But this ties it to the beginning of the line, so we know it's indentation we're talking about. JSON can never have spaces at the beginning of the line, other than if there are new lines. But we convert new lines to \n, \r, and so on. So that's not a problem either. Okay. So now we can actually try this. So if we go back to this array that didn't print very nicely, and then we say expr dot JSON mat, and you see that looks much nicer, right? Compact format for that. Okay. Maybe we shouldn't, in this compact format, maybe we shouldn't do comma bracket like that. We should probably change that. Ooh, that'll be interesting. How do we ensure that it's not inside a string? That's complicated. And we have to parse JSON in order to do that. Meh. Oh, I know how. Of course. It's when we combine things at the end, we just need to say if right before the line break, it's not just spaces there, it's also or white space, also commas. I think that will do it. So if we say white space and comma at that point, we get rid of that. So spaces and line breaks like that. I think that'll do it. No, that's going to be dangerous, because we might have this, and that has commas in it, I think. If we try that. Yeah, whoa, it just got rid of everything. That's just that change that I made. I got rid of everything. Hold on. What did I break now? Oh, I know what. This assignment is wrong. Oh well. Let's try that again. And then remove the commas there. I think. Yeah, see, that's wrong, because it removes these internal commas. So we only want to remove commas if it's from this guy over here. So that's fairly easy. We can just say we just say omega dot pattern num. So if the pattern number is 0, 1, 2, it's always an offset like that. So if the pattern number is 2, then we keep it. So if it's different from 2, we drop the comma from there. So I think this will work. Well, it worked. It just didn't remove the commas that I expected it to. It removed some of them. It removed these. Oh, I have an idea. No, would that work? Did I remove that? Why Sheng M is saying I removed a close bracket comma. No, it just removed the commas there. It didn't remove this comma here. It didn't remove any brackets, I think. There are 3 brackets here, 3 brackets here. No, that's fine. I just didn't remove as many as I could have, and that's because that comma lives in here before the bracket there. Oh, actually, I might be able to do. We know that there's going to be a comma here. Actually, why is there even the parenthesis around this thing? We never actually use it, do we? No. So we can get rid of this parenthesis in the regular expression over here. Okay, this isn't really essential to what we're doing now, and this is good enough for now. We can get back to this. Okay, so this takes. Now we do JSON mat. It's actually just JS mat. Does this work on higher rank stuff? Just to make sure. Yeah, so why is it called mat? Again, this was just something I wrote a quick thing for. Let's just call it JS. That's fine. On the value, and that becomes the result. Okay, so we can already try this, except we need to evaluate this. So I'm doing execute now, but that's not going to be permanent. So we can try this already with expr iota 2.3. See, that worked. And format j. Ooh. Oh yeah, I know why. Of course, format. That works. And APL. Ooh, that's not good. That's because I said array instead of serialize. Okay, try that again. Right. Okay, so far so good. So then what we need to do now is fix up. We write to file if that's what we want. Oh yeah, and I don't like these names format and file because then they clash against. So what can I call them instead? Is really the format language. Okay, fine, do that. Or you could call this out. Be that. Okay, so now we have this, and now we just need to choose whether we should output it to file or whether we should print it, in which case we want to mix it. And possibly remove trailing spaces. What does this even return up here? There's spaces? No, it doesn't have spaces. Ah, so it's a vector. It returns a vector. Okay, that's fine. So now we say if params.file. So if it's set, then it has that value. So that means if it's different from 0, if it's not set, it's 0. So if it's different from 0, then we want to write to file. If it's set to 0, maybe positives are better. If it's 0, that means we just want to print it. So then we just say res gets the mix of the result of res, and then we also want to do a quad FMT on it in case. Oh, actually, no, we don't need to. That's fine. is mostly in the case of this. This becomes a matrix, and this is just a vector with line break. That's fine. And otherwise, we want to write it out to file, so we say quad input, and so enclose the result, and we put that to the file. That file, and the 1 means we overwrite the file if it exists. That's fine. And that's it. And then it's still going to return a result if we write to the file, which we probably don't want. So we probably, I think quad input says how many bytes were written. Yeah, number of bytes written to the file. I guess we could output that. Or maybe we should just be silent. Maybe just be silent. You can set. If it doesn't have a result, then we just stop. That can work, I guess. Or maybe even better. We'll call this content. That's a better way to do it. And then we do content here and content here. So then we haven't assigned res. That just means the user command won't have a result, which is fine. Okay, shall we try this? We still need to write the help for it as well, but okay. So now if we do this, yeah, now it's not called format anymore, it's called language. Value error. Oh, okay, so we have an error. You debugged on. Let's see where that error is. Params.format. Because it's not called format anymore, is it? It's now called language. Hello, Rickety P. Right. Okay, so let's try that again. That works fine. And then we can, if we don't do the -l, we get this, and if we do -l equals JS, we get this, which is also kind of nice. And if you do format each, nice. Okay, so now and then for the file, we can try that. So we can we write this JS to file equals /temp/JS. No, actually, it should be array.js. JSON? No, it's JS. Ooh, we got an error. Oh yeah, I know what this error is. It's because I have udebug on, and it's noticing that I don't have a result. So this should be fine. Oh, okay. Well, that's what happens when you turn it on when it's already on. There we go. We'll try that again. There you go. Now it's working. And then let's try to read it. Quad nget temp array.js. Yay. Oh, that's a bit weird. It wrote it with a 13. We probably want to write that with a 10, don't we? Yep. So when we do a quad input, let's see, what does it look like? The second argument, end of line. Let's see, how does it go? Content, encoding, and new line. We don't care about the encoding. That can stay the way it is. But the new line is important. Oops. And So it's either that or a vector labeled value from here. So value. So we want to do a 10 there. Right? Either that or we do a normalize. Should we do it by platform or should we always do a 10? I don't even know. I think if I do normalize that, how embedded line separators are treated. Embedded line separator as perceived as it is, every embedded LF is replaced by new line. Every embedded line separator is replaced. What's the default? Default is 1. Everything is replaced by new line. Huh, that's odd. Oh, LF is replaced by. So it's every line separated character is replaced by new line. So we should probably do 2. And NeoL2. NeoL2. Okay, let's try this again. So we do this. Length error. What did I write? Oh. Content. Oh, so maybe I don't even need this anymore, I think. Let's try. Okay, and then we can read this. And it changed it. Okay, so this is now going to be platform dependent. So on Windows, it's going to be a 1310, which is what you expect there. And on other platforms, it's going to be just a 10. It's probably what people expect. I mean, there's no good solution to this mess that the world has gotten itself into with regards to new lines. Right. That takes care of that. And this we can always fix that later. And if we print it, we can see that still works. Oops. Yeah, that works. And APL, this looks kind of nice. Oh yeah, right. Now I know. There's one more thing we need to fix, and that is this execution here. It's happening inside here, right? So that's a bit of a problem because let's say we have a variable called disk, that's ABC, and then we want to evaluate disk here. We got something entirely different because it picked it up from inside that namespace. So we want to use the calling namespace. And if I remember right, the way it works is that the user command framework makes available to this run function runs in a namespace. So it runs in its own namespace, and this namespace is located in another namespace that contains some meta information. So what we want to do here is we just want to do hash dot this, and this is a reference to the namespace where the user called the user command from, because user commands are available in every namespace. So let's see if that works. Yep, look at that magic. So in fact, this isn't running in hash at all. It's running in quadec.solutils.c something, whatever, some strange location. But yeah, this seems to work. Now the only thing that's missing is the help, and we can always come back and improve the formatting of that. That's not really what I want to demonstrate today. And so the way the help works is it takes as right argument the command name, but we already know what the command name is because it's always this. And the left argument is a level, which is an integer 0 and up. And basically for 0 we want to give a minimal syntax description. So for example, for Apple Cart, user command, another new user command in version 18.1, we just print this. So this is added by the framework, and this is stuff that we add. So I'm going to do something similar here. So I think I always want to print this. Actually, we can go and copy in the code from there. So if you say uload Apple Cart, so we can go to the help section for that. No, it's not here. It's here, of course. Help. So you can see how this function is done. So let's just copy this function and then we can modify it. Oops, that was a mistake. Copied the wrong thing. There we go. So you see list.disk goes in here. So it even picks it up from here, from this namespace. It's a bit of a roundabout way to do it. Let me just do disk as well. Here. Oh, and then the syntax. That's interesting. So we use the syntax here? How did it actually do that? Oh, it's just defined here instead of... I wonder why I did it like that. Interesting. It doesn't really matter. Close that. So here is the syntax description. And we're going to say that the syntax description is not Apple Card, obviously. EXPR. And then it's going to be an expression. And then optionally you can specify language, and then it has to be either APL or JS. So I'm here using a little bit more standard syntax, but it's not rigorous the way this one is. And optionally you can specify file equals, and then it has to be file. A file name maybe, like that. That's it. Okay. And then we're going to say if. So this always goes into the help with the description, this part, and then if the level, that's the left argument, is 0, then we return this much help with one more line, which is that you can get more help with details and examples. And then this is the details and examples. So we're going to say expression here, and I'm keeping 2 blanks in between here because that means the user commit framework will format the help output in a nice way, folding the right side like it will be 2 columns if I do it like that. So language, and actually we don't want, just want 1 there, and this is file. Can align things. Expression. What should we say? The value to generate an expression for. It's a bit odd. So this is called EXPR. This is called EXPR. Generate code maybe is better. You can generate code for. And then we have not this. We don't need that. There aren't so many options. File. Write code to printing the result. Stop printing it. We can get rid of all this, and then we write some examples. So we do AXPR, and I go to 2.3. XPR. That's enough. Like that, I think. So here we are going to use the language APL, and here we're going to use file equals /temp/ should we do this as JavaScript? L equals JS. .js. We can align these nicely. This extra comment. So print APL expression that evaluates. That's good enough. And this is print APL array notation. Oh, maybe we should do that here under. Oh, did I forget one? Oh, I must have lost something. Here you go. So here we do file equals APL. Do it like this. This should be JavaScript there. Generate APL array notation. And this is generate and JavaScript object notation. Not JSON, JavaScript object notation, not the same thing. Okay, print APL array notation, and this is create file with JavaScript code. There we go. I think that's about it. Let's try it. EXPR, a single level of help. That's a nice syntax summary. And 2 levels of, well, we don't even need, I mean, you can always just go up here, do that. English sentences can't end with conjunctions, or how is it, prepositions, something like that. Nah, this is fine. And so you can see this user command framework. If I change my session to be really narrow like this, then and we do the same thing, so then it's going to wrap things like this nicely. I think I'm getting rid of this guy. It's so wide there. No need to. I don't have to show everything. Okay. Yeah. Now if we do this, see, that works nice. Evaluates. No spell checking here. That evaluates. Okay, I can always go and fiddle with this, this formatting thing, but this is basically it. And hopefully can look forward to having this command available in version 18.1. Any questions? Feel free to ask in the chat. Okay, fine. Thank you so much for today. Thank you for watching.